In February 2014, Russia hosted the 22nd Winter Olympic Games in Sochi. The country had emerged from its Soviet-era shadow and had overcome the economic shock therapy of the 1990s to become an increasingly wealthy and well-integrated global economy. The country still had its controversies, but this was going to be an opportunity for it to show off its success on the world stage through the unifying power of sportsmanship. Unfortunately, just 4 days after the Games' closing ceremonies, Russia annexed the Crimean Peninsula, kicking off a slow but steady regression from one of the fastest growing major economies in the world into what it is today, which is a petro-state crippled by intense global sanctions and an expensive ongoing conflict. Then there is China. In 2022, it hosted the Winter Olympic Games at the same time as its economy was recording the first year of stagnant economic growth since opening up to global trade and private industry in the 1980s. This marked the end of the single most intense period of economic growth in human history. Many economists predict that China's rapid growth and plateau have many of the same characteristics as Japan in the 1980s and 1990s, when it became the global manufacturing hub before its own real estate market bubble popped, its workers became less globally competitive, and the ageing population became a national burden. One of the other less obvious similarities is that Japan hosted the 1998 Winter Olympics at the same time as its economy was dealing with the Asian financial crisis, a downturn that now, almost 3 decades later, it hasn't recovered from. Looking further back in history, there were of course the 1936 Olympic Games in Berlin, which, well, obviously had their problems. Later this month, the French Olympics are going to be held at the same time as heightened tensions in the country over a stagnating economy and quality of life sacrifices that are coming because of it. And since my own home of Australia is slated to host the Olympic Games in 2032, it sounds like a good time to ask if the Olympics are a predictor of economic downturns. So, is there a reason that economic challenges line up with the Olympic Games, or is this just an odd coincidence? What lessons could economies learn from these challenges? And finally, if there is a connection here, are these multi-billion-dollar national vanity events really worth it? Every year, the number and size of data breaches goes up. It's becoming harder and harder to protect your data online, and brokers buy this data and sell it to companies who will annoy you with spam mail sent to your house or robocalling you at random inconvenient times. That's why we've partnered up with Incogni for this video, because these daily annoyances aren't the big problem. Some people can gather enough data about you from different brokers to take out loans in your name or steal your identity online. This can be a big headache, but Incogni helps prevent this from happening by contacting data brokers and using the law to make them delete your data. All you need to do is grant them the right to work for you, and they'll do the rest. After I got started with them, Incogni found 89 places on the internet where my data was being sold online. Within an hour of setting it up, Incogni had removed 26 of them and was dealing with more. You don't need to do anything yourself. Incogni contacts and removes you from lists online to drastically reduce your chances of cybercriminals stealing your data. So, try Incogni now and use our code economics at the link in the description and get 60% off an annual plan. Of course, the original Olympic Games were technically first held in Olympia, Greece between 776 BC and 393 CE. Suffice to say, the ancient model that the Olympic Games once represented, almost 2,000 years ago, scarcely resemble the modern event held every 4 years today. These games were jump-started in 1896 by a French aristocrat named Pierre de Coubertin. He felt this revival would serve a greater purpose in the realm of cultural representation, and with the help of the International Olympic Committee, which Coubertin co-founded, the dream quickly became a reality. 14 nations participated in Athens when it was reintroduced. Now the IOC recognises 206 countries and their respective national committees that participate in the quadrennial event where rivalries can be settled in a variety of different competitions. In a way, the Olympics serve a mostly non-lethal battleground, promoting healthy competition amongst those choosing to flaunt their achievements and potential of their most skilled athletes. But as always, there are other motives behind this expanding array of festivities and the value it all represents. Basically, the Olympics has arguably become the most lavish spectacle for bragging rights on the planet, with opening ceremonies and facilities becoming more and more elaborate over time. In fact, from the very moment the IOC was founded, one of the ultimate goals was to find ways to radically monetize such a massive global celebration, though this wasn't an easy task at first. For most countries, the Olympics looked like a tremendous liability. A good example would be the chaos that followed Montreal's failure in 1976. Delays in construction and cost overruns for a new stadium resulted in $1.5 billion worth of debt for the Canadian taxpayer, which is a huge burden for any government, but especially significant in 1976 dollars, and it took over 30 years to pay off. At the time, it was an expensive public service that most taxpayers just weren't that interested in. But this all arguably changed when Los Angeles stood as the lone bidder for the summer of 1984. Not only was the US city able to leverage its position for better terms with the IOC, but its pre-existing stadiums and developed transit systems gave it a considerable leg up when compared to other hosts in the past. Corporate sponsors, principally US-based multinationals, were allowed to put Olympic symbols on their products, which were then marketed as the official such product of the Olympics. For LA, it was a great chance to embrace the new media and branding opportunities. So then, what exactly continues to encourage countries to participate in the present day, and why does the arrival of the Olympics often coincide with crashes?